This is an important video. Someone at British Airways, and more importantly Heathrow, needs to see this because things have gone too far. This started as a regular review and descended into absolute chaos on arrival in London, to the point where I don't think I've witnessed an airline handling disruption so poorly. So first, let me share my business class review, because that's the main purpose of this video, and then you'll hear what happened after landing. It sucks because there are a few amazing things about the onboard experience and some less amazing things that you'll see, but those in no way justify flying British Airways if you have to deal with the shit show that is Heathrow and British Airways ground operations. This is not an exaggerated video for views. This is not a one-off issue. This is a culmination of issue after issue that leads me to believe that no one cares about their customers here, well, besides squeezing as much profit out of them as possible. I post this video with a heavy heart because I don't like completely bashing airlines anymore, but someone's got to say it, so here we go. Why should you listen to me? I'm clearly just entitled and arrogant, as Charles says. Well, I'm Nonstop Dan, a half Swede, half American who has been obsessed with airplanes for as long as I can remember. Over the past 8 years, I've been lucky to call reviewing airlines my full-time job, and in that time, I've flown 150 different airlines, always self-funded. Nothing makes me happier than seeing you guys have an amazing trip after following my advice. So I hope this video helps you with your choices. This travel day starts in Doha, Qatar, not the most unexpected place on my channel. I head to the airport at 7 a.m. ahead of my 8:50 a.m. departure, which was originally supposed to depart from Kuwait City but was cancelled by British Airways for no clear reason 3 weeks prior to the flight. After 4 calls to the airline, I got an agent who finally agreed to rebook me from Doha. I needed to get back to Sweden for a special trip I'd booked to the US, so this was my only option in terms of dates. As I pull up to the terminal, I'm so excited to see how the whole experience compares to Qatar Airways, which I've obviously flown on this route and similar dozens of times. I'm super curious to see how British Airways passengers are treated here in Doha, because while Qatar Airways has a very exclusive business class check-in, I'm not quite sure about BA. Check-in is smooth and I find out I'm entitled to visit the Al Morjan Business Class Lounge, which, spoiler alert, is undoubtedly the most luxurious part of this whole trip, but I decide to head straight to my gate. One thing I want to say before we board though is that given what a popular airline British Airways is, they're one of the biggest airlines in Europe, to me it's shocking that there aren't more reviews of them. I feel like people should be reviewing them all the time, but instead we're all reviewing Qatar Airways, Emirates, and Singapore Airlines because they get the most views. I last flew Club World in December 2020 when there were massive COVID restrictions on the service, making it not great. So let's just say I'm very curious to see what the experience is like in 2023. Today, we'll also get to see the very best side of British Airways as we fly a 1-month-old 787-10. So why don't we hop on over to the Nonstop Dan seat map database to see what's waiting on board. The British Airways 787-10 is a real stunner, with 8 first-class seats, 48 business-class seats, wow, 35 premium economy seats, and 165 economy-class seats. As you can tell, premium cabins are an especially large focus for British Airways, so they should do them well, right? In this cabin, row 6 has a blocked window, so I'd avoid that, but most other seats are created equal. I went for the seat I almost always choose, the last one in the cabin, 11A in this case, which happens to be especially great because there's no seat next to it. Let's hop on board so I can show you around. I have run down the jetway and managed to be the first person on board, so welcome to the Club World cabin. Spread out in a 1-2-1 reverse herringbone layout, this is a great, if slightly uninspiring seat. They all have doors, which is 100% a gimmick in this case because the privacy is fantastic when seated with or without the door, especially back here with no neighbor. Welcome to my seat 11A. My bedding and amazing pillow from the White Company are awaiting here, so I shove them on the footrest and settle in. I'm welcomed on board by name and thanked for being an Executive Club Gold member with a choice of champagne or orange juice. They describe this orange juice as fresh. If by fresh they mean the type of orange squash us Europeans mix ourselves from concentrate, I would have to agree. Let's look around our so-called club suite. As with most reverse herringbones, we have a storage locker and 2 bins on the side. The latter contains all our charging ports and is remarkably stupidly designed. A British charger doesn't fit here, so you can't charge a Mac with a British charger on a British airline. There are no USB-C ports either to help with that. Besides that, this is an impressive amount of storage and definitely more than enough. Below here are our seat controls. Since I was so quick to board, I had plenty of time to explore the entertainment system, and holy British macaroni, what has happened to High Life Entertainment? British Airways now has by far the biggest selection of TV shows of any airline in the world. I see a total of 320 different shows, and most of those have multiple seasons with 4 to 12 episodes per season. We're talking several thousand episodes in total. The movie selection is almost equally impressive, with foreign language films in Arabic, Chinese, French, German, Hindi, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Kannada, Marathi, Portuguese, Punjabi, Russian, Spanish, Tamil, Telugu, and more. Whew. The accompanying headphones are pretty standard business class quality. Another thing that's entertaining, the cabin crew. The youngest crew member taking care of me must have been a maximum of 21 years old. I later found out he flies on weekends and goes to university on weekdays. What? The rest of the crew were typical BA, extremely casual, which is sort of charming occasionally, just given how laid back it is. At precisely 8:50 a.m., we push back from gate B5 and start our taxi around almost the entire airport to reach the Europe-bound departure runway. As we take off and get closer to London and the chaos that awaits, let me emphasize that I never set out to make negative videos. I occasionally get comments from people saying that all I ever do is complain, which is categorically incorrect. And I have one way to prove that to you. By clicking that subscribe button right now, you'll see all my future posts and discover that the majority of my videos are positive. It's really a no-brainer, so whether you're a hater or you're one of the amazing people who likes my content, why not hit that button and support my unbiased and balanced reviews? After takeoff, I head to one of 3 Club World lavatories, which are definitely on the teeny tiny side, but stocked with a variety of great products. Back in my seat, the crew has commenced the meal service as we fly over Bahrain. This is our menu for today. Breakfast is always the most underwhelming airplane meal, so with that in mind, this selection sounds decent. A wrap for lunch, on the other hand? The drink menu is great, with a big variety of drinks to suit all types of preferences. 50 minutes after takeoff, my meal is served all on one tray, which is standard in Club World. Besides the orange juice, this is the first service of the flight. Kinda surprising there's no initial drink service after takeoff, no nuts, and no hot towels on board whatsoever. I found out later that apparently there are supposed to be hot towels, so I guess my crew is a little naughty. My meal starts with this tray of fruit and a cold porridge with the most disgusting texture ever. I love overnight oats, and this is not overnight oats. The main course is an assortment of Indian breakfast items, and naturally, there's good Indian food in both London and Doha, so this is a nice breakfast with a real kick. Mostly I'm struck by how small the quantity of food is overall, but still you get far more here than you'd get on Virgin Atlantic. I work for a few hours by connecting to the Browse and Stream Wi-Fi package for about £15. Let's just say you won't get any streaming done here, since the speeds can barely handle a simple Google search without disconnecting or taking painfully long to load. While I'm connected to this Wi-Fi network, let me emphasize the utmost importance of protecting yourself when using Wi-Fi in public, since these networks can be compromised by criminals to intercept your data and even alter it. This is a so-called man-in-the-middle attack, and the only way to truly protect against it is by using a VPN like today's video sponsor, NordVPN, the fastest VPN on the market that not only protects your browsing and unlocks all types of services and websites that might be blocked in the country you're traveling, whether that be streaming services in various countries or even Google in China. But it also includes threat protection, which protects you from scammers, malware, and so much more, so you don't have to worry about coming across ill-intentioned sites when you're on the internet. Best of all, NordVPN just turned 11, and to celebrate, anyone who signs up at nordvpn.com/nonstopdan and uses code nonstopdan at checkout will receive a free gift of extra time on top of the already heavily discounted rate, giving you NordVPN for the price of a coffee every month on 2-year plans. Again, that's nordvpn.com/nonstopdan to protect yourself online and support my reviews in the process. The 21-year-old flight attendant reminds me so much of the guy who goes to the US in Love Actually. He passes me multiple times saying, "Can I tempt you with a Lindor?" Which almost makes me laugh out loud. But eventually I tell him I can't eat it because it contains milk, and he proceeds to bring me this massive selection of snacks. These popcorn are insane. I guess they're BA's version of the in-flight crack that is Finnair's barbecue nuts. After a while, I'm getting tired and decide to make my bed. There are no individual air vents on board, but the cabin temperature was good. Before I go to sleep, I check out the amenity kit, which, just like the bedding, is from the White Company. I absolutely love the smell of these products, which are infused with essential oils. There's an essential oil spray to help you relax, which I almost empty on this flight alone. As we're about 75 minutes out of London, afternoon tea is served, which is bread with a side of bread. I usually love finger sandwiches, but it's better when they have flavor. At least the plating is quite nice. Soon enough, we approach London, where everything starts going downhill. Over to real life Dan to explain what happened next. So here I am in YouTuber mode, gonna tell you exactly what happened after we landed at Heathrow, because everything was going pretty well. Although I might have sounded a bit critical at some points during the video, I really was quite impressed by British Airways, especially by the entertainment system. The service was, British in a fun way. Anyway, all of that was overshadowed by what happened after we landed. So we were 30 minutes early into Heathrow, which in and of itself is a complete miracle. But unsurprisingly, there was no gate available for us. I thought, that's fine. I have a 1 hour, 50-minute connection. So we taxi out to the westernmost holding point at the airport. And then we just stood there. The captain came on once saying it's going to be about a 20-minute wait. After 30 minutes of sitting there, he comes on again and says we still have no gate and no timeline. I think, okay, fine, it can't be that much longer. And it seemed like it was about -4 that morning, which apparently in the UK leads to absolute chaos. So flights were super delayed coming in and out, meaning there were many aircraft occupying gates that weren't supposed to be occupied at that time. But again, I thought this is no big deal. And about 5 minutes after our scheduled landing time, we started taxiing, and I thought, thank goodness we finally have a gate. That was wishful thinking. From there, we proceeded to have the most unnecessary random taxi around Heathrow Terminal 5. You couldn't even make this up. Our route took us on a scenic tour of most of the concourses of Terminal 5 before, after 15 minutes, we ended up at a bus gate right by Terminal 3, and I was like, hello, my connection is leaving from here. Can I just walk? So at this point, it's about 20 minutes after our scheduled arrival. And I'm thinking, it's all good. This is British Airways' main hub. They have it under control. The stairs pull up to our aircraft right away. So I'm thinking, this is all going well. So naturally, everyone has stood up, got their bags, collected their things, and left their seats. The aisles are packed, as they always tend to be. And then the captain comes on and says, ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that there are no buses. And given that a few flights were canceled that morning, the buses can't have been in such high demand, but we thought, All right, fine. After a long flight, it's nice to stand up and stretch your legs, which we do for another 15 minutes until the captain comes on again and says, ladies and gentlemen, for some reason, they've only sent one bus. We're waiting for more. What happens after this is something that I've personally never really experienced before. After about another 5 minutes, the captain comes on and says, ladies and gentlemen, I know this sounds like kind of a joke, but there's a vehicle blocking the bus, and until that vehicle has been moved, the bus can't board. At this point, everyone on the plane is thinking, can't the bus just reverse? Apparently not at Heathrow. And given that it's 40 minutes after our scheduled arrival at this point and 70 minutes after we touch down, people start to get a little crazy. Now keep in mind, most of the people on this flight were British, but British crazy is not quite American crazy, thank goodness. But even so, people start yelling at the flight attendants who are literally just standing there without a word. And people start shoving up the aisles, pushing so that the area around the door, which was close to my seat, was literally overfilling with people. People were being pushed out onto the stairs. People were being pushed in every direction. And there was one specific guy who's like, I'm a brain surgeon. I have surgery scheduled for 4 p.m. And I'm like, wow, we need to get off this plane. But also, why did you schedule a surgery for the day you landed on a British Airways flight at Heathrow? That can never end well. So he's yelling, other people are yelling, and the resounding word that everyone is using is, this is a disgrace. And I feel really bad for the crew because none of this was their fault, but the amount of abuse they were receiving from the passengers was insane. And it wasn't helped by the fact that the captain remained silent. Obviously he was embarrassed, but we ended up waiting another 20 minutes for someone to move that vehicle. Meaning we spent a total of 90 minutes on the plane after touchdown waiting to get off. When the terminal was empty, there was no reason to put us there. And I was trying to figure out the buses, pushback vehicles, who do these belong to? Is it Heathrow or British Airways? And based on the asking around I've done, it seems like British Airways has their own vehicles, including their own buses, meaning that it's entirely their fault that no buses came. Still, at this point, I wasn't expecting to make any negative video about British Airways because this kind of stuff happens, and ultimately I was lucky to be in a business class seat. It wasn't so painful for me. The only problem was that at this point I had a 1-hour connection where I'd have to switch from Terminal 5 to 3 at Heathrow, which is a notoriously slow process. So finally the bus leaves. It takes 10 minutes to drive to Terminal 5 and I run for it to the transit signs for Terminal 3, where for some completely unnecessary reason, the buses to Terminal 3 only leave every 15 minutes at an airline's main hub. And when you're in a rush like me, that is not ideal. Luckily, a bus came after about 10 minutes and I made it to Terminal 3 10 minutes after that, meaning at this point it was 30 minutes until my connection was leaving. And I was kind of on the fence of whether or not I should even try catching that flight, because the next day I had a super important, expensive British Airways flight I was going to review, flying from Gothenburg to Dallas via Heathrow again. So I was thinking, if I missed this flight to Gothenburg, I might be able to convince someone at British Airways to cancel my flight from Gothenburg to London, and then I can just stay here, sleep overnight, and fly from London to Dallas on the flight I wanted to review. But I had promised my family I was going to come home for that night to have dinner with them and hang out with them, and I was a little worried that they wouldn't agree to the rebooking, so I thought it's best to try to catch it. I reached the scanner for transit security 29 minutes before my connecting flight is supposed to leave. I scan my boarding pass and it goes beep, 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 red light, and the agent says, no, sorry, you've missed your flight. Head back to customer service and they'll rebook you. And there was literally no line for transit security. I could have totally made it, but the system rejected me anyway and sent me to the enormous line for customer service. Again, I was so lucky that I had priority, and as a British Airways Gold member, I could use the first class desk because there was no business class desk. And at the first class desk, there was only one party ahead of me. So after about 5 minutes, it was my turn. And insanely enough, the agent goes, wait, I watch your videos. And I thought, what's gonna happen now? He goes, what's the problem? So I say they won't let me through the transit. He says, no, come with me. So he actually took me back to the security and said, let this guy through. He knows what he's doing. I didn't get to try my luck with rebooking because maybe I could have just kept the Dallas flight, skipped Gothenburg. But I was so grateful for that coincidence, which obviously none of the other passengers were lucky to have. So I put my bag on the scanner, I send it through, and of course my bag is randomly selected for a thorough screening. And the woman is taking her time, and by the time she's repacked it, it's 10 minutes until my connection is leaving. And at Heathrow, the gate is supposed to close, I think, 20 minutes before the flight. I am not running after this day. If I make it, I make it. And guess what? I made it. So I'm the last to leave the holding area. I am on board about 10 minutes after the flight scheduled departure. And I'm thinking, great, everything is going well until we sit there and wait. And finally the captain comes on about 30 minutes after scheduled departure saying, well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to inform you that there is quite a lack of pushback trucks here at Heathrow. So we're just waiting on a truck now. It should be here in 15 to 20 minutes. I think, great. We've heard that before. Fast forward almost 2 hours and we still don't have a pushback truck. No word about when one might come. And again, this is a British Airways main hub. Several flights are canceled, so the load is actually lower than usual. And still they can't seem to find a single pushback truck to dedicate to our flight for 10 minutes. And of course, during this time, the crew was lovely, I have to say, but they have not been trained to give any service whatsoever. I was sitting in Club Europe, which is European business class, and do you think in those 2 hours the crew offered anything to drink? Forget about a pre-departure beverage on British Airways, but with a 2-hour delay, do you think they offered drinks, snacks, anything like that? Not a thing. They were just chatting in the galley until finally I asked them for something to drink, at which point they offered it to other passengers in business. Finally, a pushback truck arrives. We push back and thankfully have a quick taxi, so we lift off about 2 hours delayed. Due to strong headwinds, we land in Gothenburg 2 hours behind schedule. I meet up with my mom. It was lovely. And as we're in the car going to our house, this is about 8 p.m., I get an email saying, British Airways regrets to inform you that your flight tomorrow morning from Gothenburg to London Heathrow is delayed by 2 hours. And how long do you think my connection in London was the next day? 2 hours. So needless to say, it wasn't a very relaxing night, and it was made worse when I called British Airways to ask about solutions. They couldn't offer me anything over the phone. And by the way, this was the first flight of the morning. The aircraft had been there overnight, so unfortunately I had a very sleepless night. Got out of bed at 5 a.m., went to the airport where there was a surprisingly really helpful woman who worked for Menzies, nothing to do with British Airways. She was trying to find me a solution to rebook, but she said, you know, there's no way I can get a refund through, so just try calling British Airways a few times because I can't understand why they wouldn't offer a refund. Now, the law states that a 4-hour delay or more would require a refund, but at the same time, if you're gonna miss your connection, you're gonna be super delayed to your destination, even if it's not fully 4 hours. I really don't understand why passengers wouldn't just be allowed to cancel if they don't want to travel anymore. So I ended up calling British Airways twice. The first time was just a 5-minute call. The agent just outright refused. She said, there's no way I can cancel this. The second time I reached the most helpful woman in an Indian call center, and she was like, yeah, sure, I'll help you cancel. And I thought, okay, she's gonna put me on hold. She's gonna come back and say she can't. 30 minutes later, she returns and says, I've canceled your ticket. You've got a refund and you're good to go. So the thing about all of this is it might sound like, I just had a bad experience. You know, it's just me, but that's really not the case. If you've flown through Heathrow more than a couple of times, I'm pretty willing to bet you've had some issue, whether it's been an insane wait for immigration, delayed bags, missed flights, and I've had issues like that every single time I've flown through Heathrow in the past 18 months, and British Airways just makes it all worse. The reason I say this is that it's just so obvious based on this entire experience how much British Airways is prioritizing profit over passenger experience. There's no reason to have to wait 2 hours for a pushback truck at an airline's main hub like that when the weather is sunny and above freezing. So not only does this suck for passengers, it also sucks for the crew so big time. On all these flights, they had such pissed, upset passengers, yet they are the ones who have to deal with it. And British Airways and Heathrow's corporate offices that are the ones making these decisions don't have to face angry customers at all, so their decisions have no impact on them personally. Even Emirates CEO Sir Tim Clark, who's one of the most respected people in the industry, said in a statement that Heathrow has a blatant disregard for customers, saying the airport management is cavalier about their travelers and their airline customers. For me, this is just a lesson for myself and for all of you guys. If you're not going to London and there's not some insane reason for you to be traveling through Heathrow on British Airways, there is literally no reason to choose to go through there. People talk badly about other airports in Europe. I certainly think Paris Charles de Gaulle is insanely bad, but nothing beats how bad Heathrow is, truly. And unfortunately, by extension, that reflects on British Airways. With an in-flight experience like you've seen today, which is mediocre at best, I really don't see any reason to choose to fly with them. And that's it for today's video. Sorry about this long story. Hopefully it was entertaining in some ways. And on that note, thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I'm gonna go and slice this all together so I can share the story with you. And until I see you in my next video, which is let's just say pretty interesting as well. Fly safe.